Oh, maybe it wasn't connected.
I don't think so. I think that's the email that I got saying that the live stream was not working. Well, anyways, if you are tuned in, whether on YouTube or wherever, we're just waiting on our guest. I know she's having technical difficulties. We're just trying to pass the time and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking to ourselves for a little bit.
Yeah, we've been reflecting on, there's a couple interesting things. Most of our guests have been from the East Coast, which is hard for one because of the time difference, 6 hour time difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this hasn't been intentional. It's kind of interesting. We also said every one of our guests for the last 6 or 7 of them have all been Black individuals, as we might perceive them.
Mm.
And that's not it. That was not
Male.
intentional either. It was just something that came about. Um,
Yeah. And we were reflecting on we just love to have more in person recordings as well. It's a different energy when you're in person. So people in Hawaii, and if we're back in Alaska, which Ace and maybe more of us will be in September with the NASW conference. We would love to meet folks and have in person guests.
mhm.
And you got to do some of that. Well, maybe was it just one guest in
In
Chicago?
Chicago, yeah, actually, all of them were virtual. We should have left more time and done it differently,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't. And so we were jam packed with interviews, and then we had Dr. Armana and Bise, which was one of the best ones. It's a much different dynamic
Yeah.
when you're in person. Um,
Yeah. And I think that
so
was the intention, right? To have more time in person, but then there was just so many great individuals to record with that were virtual that it just stacked up really quick,
mhm. We
which
had
was
a,
good too.
a ton of good guests, so
Mm-hmm.
it was cool in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, but there is just a different dynamic of being in person, and I think that reflects. I was talking to my students in a talking circle yesterday,
Mm.
and the same themes tend to come up. Students in my summer course, and the same themes tend to, keep, um, reappearing, and that's that people feel more disconnected than ever right now.
Yeah.
You know, and so despite being more connected than ever, like you can get your news right this second, up to date at the second. You can, follow pretty much anybody on social media. Maybe not everybody, but almost anybody. We can connect like we had the podcast with being in Chicago, Hawaii, Ireland all together, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, what I hear people saying is that they feel more disconnected than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I was reading something the other day. Someone posted on LinkedIn an article about the what was it about mental health crisis, specifically in America, and what the biggest causes is not like dissatisfaction in your career or financial stress, other stresses that financial stress can cause, like with housing and um, food insecurity and stuff like that. But it was lack of connection and lack of community. And yeah, just what you're speaking to, I think we've neglected it, especially since COVID. Things haven't completely switched back. Like a Teams or a Zoom meeting is more likely to happen than an in-person meeting, even if people are in the same area, which is it's sad. And I don't know what the answer is other than us to just keep talking about why connection and community is so important.
Yeah, I think it goes to the way that we take things for granted. We often cheer something new that comes on.
Yeah.
Even like say like the iPhone, right, or
Mm.
smartphone. Most people were like, "That's pretty cool," like I need to get me one of those type of
Mhm.
thing. But what you don't realize that you give up over, and then, I mean, and through the pandemic's even a better example when okay, it's great now we can have Zoom meetings. I'd never done one before the pandemic, and then everything got switched. All my classes got switched over to Zoom, and ever since that's what I've been doing.
Mhm.
And so it's cool that we can Zoom and that we can do these podcasts, broadcasting remotely and all that. Um, but on the other hand, you don't realize what you lose, and you were losing all those in-person meetings. And although we're in Hawaii, I teach we both work in Alaska basically, and you didn't ever really get to experience this, but Alaska back in the day was very robust with travel
Mm.
and interpersonal gatherings at different parts of the state because it had to be that way because everybody was so spread out. So in order to get some training or convene in any type of way, then folks had to convene in somewhere like Anchorage or Fairbanks, and it used to be just a really robust situation where people were traveling all the time and being able to unite and connect. And some of that's still going on with like Rural Human Services and the
Yeah.
VSW cohort. Um,
Not widespread though, especially not within organizations. There's not so much of a push to send people to in-person conferences, which is it's such a shame. I mean, within my position, I've seen over the past, well, I would say over the whole like 4 years I've been there, most of the conferences or the trainings we do are online. We rarely are sending people to go to in-person trainings, and I think that's a lot of things. There's financial cuts, but I think there's also just everyone's got comfortable with doing online, and we've really forgotten how important it is to just be with each other. And I was talking to some coworkers the other day how we would love to set up within our organization our own sort of conference slash retreat where we're just getting together once a year or even every other year, just to connect and meet each other and know the little face that's on the team screen, do trainings at the same time. And I think organizations also need to think about this in terms of retention of employees in social work, because we got into social work for a reason. We want to be around people, help people in some kind of way. And so why it's weird that that's just completely been lost within behavioral health organizations, especially. It makes sense in other fields a little bit more, but within social work,
I think a better way to put that is it doesn't make sense anywhere,
well, yeah.
but there should be even more of an emphasis in social work on those kind of things.
Mm,
And you could potentially get a bachelor's or a master's or both in social work without really interacting with people much
yeah.
through online asynchronous programs, including the one that I teach in. And I try to do my best to provide opportunities for connection and interaction. And
Mhm.
um, I think that the students that utilize it, it works. But
Yeah.
I think it's also hard to get everyone to utilize it because part of the reason people are doing the online asynchronous type of programs is they got a bunch of other stuff going on, and it's
Mhm.
hard to manage all of those things.
Yeah.
For those of you that are in the chat, I see there's just a couple of you are in the audience. Our guest is having technical difficulties, so I'm not sure if she's going to make it yet or not. But we're just talking story about social work and connection and reconnection. So feel free to say what's up to us if you want to chat with us or you have any questions or just want to say hello.
Yeah. Or even call in, right? They can.
You could even call in and chat with us. You never know, this might turn out to be the one of the better podcast episodes.
Mhm.
Unplanned.
We never know what we're walking into anyway. But
Yeah. Well, let's talk a
yeah.
little bit more about that idea of connection and whether social work fosters connection.
Mhm.
Um, and I think when we talk about social work, what do we mean by that? I mean, are we talking about the profession? Are we talking about the NASW? Are we talking about social workers? But I think in this case, it's best to talk about it as in the profession,
Yeah.
because obviously somebody who's just being not just, but who is practicing social work on the margins or outside of the profession, um, they can do whatever they want.
Mhm.
Um, but social workers inside the profession, right? You go through, you get your bachelor's degree, which you can take at your own pace. People know what that is, a 4-year degree. But then most folks that get an MSW, because a lot of social workers, I'd say the majority of social workers have some kind of clinical work in mind these days,
Mm.
meaning being a therapist. And I think that you get into the MSW program and you've got if you're advanced standing doing the 1-year program, you're essentially taking 5 graduate classes a semester and practicum internship, which is what, 25 hours a week or something like that.
Mhm.
Not to mention taking care of yourself. But if you do the math, I don't have all the statistics right here, but if you do the math on um, how many hours you're supposed to spend on a graduate class per week and all of that, and you add in the internship and you add in being able to pay your bills and everything else. There's really not any time for self-reflection and connection. I mean, people make it still,
Yeah.
but you're cutting corners or you're cheating at something else,
Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean. And so then they get out and they think, "Oh, I'm good to go. I'm gonna get my licensure and everything." And then they realize they gotta pay money to get an exam. They gotta pay money for supervision potentially. They gotta pay money for licensing fees, all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And then when they get into it, they're paying off student loans, other things like that. Not to mention just taking care of yourself and treading water with you, yourself, and your family, and all of that.
Yeah.
And then you get those job advertisements for like, to see 50, 60, 70 clients a week and make $100,000. And that's got to be tempting because, the $100,000 a year to start paying things off and, you know what I mean, getting back past tread and water. Um, but that's going to drive everybody mad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could speak more on this because you're actually doing therapy. And what's up, Tracy, by the way? Glad you were able to make it in. Sorry that it's not what we expected, at least thus far.
Hey, Tracy.
Um,
Yeah, and I also wanted to add the enticement of those $100,000 jobs plus the bonuses that now are coming with them. Plus, a lot of them do offer to pay off your student loans if you're in certain, like with the state or with IHS services as well. You can have your loans paid off. So that is very enticing, right?
mhm.
But then it comes with the stipulation of, yeah, you're seeing a lot of clients a week. And I know you say like the 50, 60, 70, but a lot of the ones I see are like 25, 30, which is incredibly hard to see 30 people a week, an hour, 45 minutes, an hour sessions, back to back sessions. That's 5 or 6 clients a day. And it may not seem a lot like the people that haven't done it. And I'm guessing a lot of people that would watch this are within that field in some way. It may not seem that much, but it's so hard to just have your mind right and be actively listening and intentionally responding and empathetic and compassionate for 30 hours a week and then go home and be compassionate and empathetic and actively listen to your partner and your kids and all of that. So I think it's really hard. And I just see more and more that organizations are offering these really enticing positions and people are getting into it and then burning out. And I've seen that happen too many times in the years that I've been doing this job, of the way that people end up leaving positions like it within clinical social work, but also like licensed professional counselors and psychologists and LMFTs, is people are leaving broken. And when I say broken, I mean like they've just been so burnt out clinically, but also just from systems. Like there's a system burnout going on within social work that people are just going until they literally cannot do it anymore. And then they end up leaving in a way that they probably wouldn't have wanted to leave,
Yeah, not
and
not a
it's
clean break.
no.
Something that's I hate to we overuse the word traumatic, but
Mm,
um, it can be traumatic going through something like that. And
yeah.
but I think so from my perspective, I wanted to get your perspective on as a therapist and
Hmm.
see your comment, Tracy, we'll get right to you. Um, is so I am a professor, so I'm different than you, and
Hmm.
my skill set's different, and I don't think that I could sit and do the work that you do anyways, consistently anyways.
Right.
So say like I have a student that wants to meet with me for whatever the reason, maybe it's something personal, maybe it's they want help with the paper, maybe they want to chat with me about whatever questions about the course, maybe they just want to connect, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But say I sit and I talk to that student for an hour, it takes a lot of energy from me. I'm not complaining at all. What I'm saying is that like it takes a lot of energy from me to pay attention because I'm absent-minded, kind of ADD type of mind, but to pay attention and to give my care and my honest, attentive attention
Hmm.
to the person. It takes a lot from me. It takes a lot out of me. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the amount of, I don't know if you want to call it labor or
Energy, I think,
yeah,
is the best
energy, the
word.
struggle of it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. And so I think about somebody who see because we were having bigger numbers earlier, but even 20, 30.
Mhm.
So I imagine myself seeing because I see more than like say 30 students a week,
Yeah.
but not in individual one-to-one scenarios.
Right.
Um, if I imagine myself doing that, I think that I wouldn't be able to care for myself in certain ways,
Hmm.
but I damn sure wouldn't be able to give that individual the care and attention that all 30 of them,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to get. And matter of fact, if I was talking to one and it was a deep session or something like that, and we went to the next one, I'd still be thinking about the old one.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying that I empathize with people that have to do all this. And
Hmm.
then I think the other element you talked about is the systems burnout and administrative side of it and all that. Is that I wasn't a therapist back then, but I was working with therapists. And back in the days, notes consisted of a notebook kind of thing, like a
Hmm.
binder. And the therapist put their notes in there. They didn't type them anything, they wrote them by hand. We called them mental health workers, I think.
Hmm.
um, they'd write their notes in there at the end of every shift just by hand, and they had a kind of I can't remember what the system was, DAP or something,
Oh yeah.
diagnosis assessment plan or something like
You
that.
remember that?
Well, there's multiple of them. I've been through
It's
multiple
so.
of them, so there's different ones.
Hmm.
But anyways, so that's how it used to be. That's changed significantly over the last 20 years, and I don't even know. But every time I get into one of those systems, it's extremely frustrating for me. I'm not a systems person, especially online, and
Mm.
so it's always clunky for me. And so I guess my point here is that, like, you talk about the weight of carrying 20 to 30 clients or even more than that in some of those other online
Yeah.
job offers and stuff like that. And then also all of the documentation and all of the systems that you have to navigate. Like you were talking about what Medicaid
Hmm.
and the requirements and things like that. I guess the simple point of the matter that I'm trying to make is that it's too much fucking weight for a social worker to carry. Pardon my language, but it's too much weight to carry.
Yeah.
And many social workers are coming from backgrounds that are troublesome on their own right. And so then that's why they got into it. And so they need to do their own maintenance, their own inventory, their own taking care of themselves as well. And so, I mean, it's just simply a fact that
It's
it's
too much.
impossible to carry the weight. I mean, you may be able to like compartmentalize some of it or stash some of
Hmm.
it over here or do this or do that. Or instead of taking care of yourself, you go out to the bar with your coworkers and debrief and unwind that way. But
Hmm. Not if you're online, right? That adds an even harder component to it.
yeah, but just examples of like
Hmm.
the way that we can, you know, compensate, fill up that empty hole inside of us with negative things that we consume.
Hmm.
And we do that as social workers, especially collectively. I mean, it's an ongoing joke. I think when you go to certain events that
Yeah.
who has a hangover or whatever. But back to the point, it's too much weight to carry. So how do you do it?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. The thing that first comes up into my mind is, so the other day, I think it was Thursday. I had finished, I was done with sessions for the day and I was finishing up my notes and just helping other clinicians. And then Ace walked into where I was working and then I just started crying. And it was reflecting on a session I just had and the amount of resilience and I don't even know what the words are, but resilience is the best word I could use right now. The resilience that this individual has, considering what they've been through, um, just hit me in the conversations we were having, and it was a lot. And it was just tears came out, and Ace was my therapist for a few minutes, and just to say that is what we come up against after like nearly every session is these emotions that come up, and then we have to do something with them and then move on to the next thing. And so really what I talk about a lot within the organization I work with and with clinicians is it is just not sustainable to be able to do these 30 client weeks for years and years. It's just not going to work. And you're going to end up leaving burnt out and you're going to end up leaving broken in some sort of way. Um, and probably not on good terms with the where you're working because it's just so stressful. And so I always talk about like advocate for yourself. Know yourself. Are you better in the morning? Do you have more energy in the morning? Do you lose focus in the afternoon? Is it the flip side? Do you know your caseload too? Like, do you know that there's certain clients that shouldn't be back to back? They're two really heavy individuals that you want to spend time with and take care of, but you cannot have them back to back. Um, Different things, like if you need more administrative time, like you have to advocate for yourself, because a lot of the times organizations are looking at a one size fits all scenario. And so there's going to be, okay, everybody has this 1 hour of administrative documentation time, but maybe that's not enough for you, and you got to speak up. So I think it's a few things. You've really got to know yourself. You got to know where your energy is best, morning, evening. You got to know your caseload, and you've got to get confident and comfortable in advocating for yourself when you know that things are not working. And this is the only way that we're going to be able to protect our own mental health in the field, I think. And then there's a whole other things when you're outside of work, and when I talk about the circle of self, there's there's areas that you need to make sure you are nourishing and nurturing so that you can do this job. Because if we don't work on our own healing and health and happiness, how are we going to help somebody else sustainably anyway? You could come in on a hangover and do a day of 7 clients. You could, but could you do that for 2 years?
But do you know what it sounds like when you're talking about this, and when you're
Hmm.
talking to me about this and other, other scenarios as well? It sounds like what they expect social workers to be is to be a robot.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm the opposite of that. I have like resistance flows through my veins. If they were diagnosing oppositionally defiant disorder, they'd come and slap it on me first thing. You ODD kid. Anyways, so
Yeah.
you talk about like having these, having however many clients, and then advocating or whatever, or having an hour of admin time or more if you need it or whatever.
Hmm.
But you know how I work, and I don't work like that. I can't
Yeah.
slot me an hour of admin time and then just expect myself to utilize it. I'll wander off and whatever, and I've got to be able to do my admin time when I'm ready to do it, if that makes sense. When I'm going to have to
Hmm.
do those notes and catch up on the documentation, I'm going to have to do it when I'm ready, or it's not going to get done. I, w- I wouldn't be able to do it, and essentially, what would happen is I would quit the job.
Yeah.
I would end up in one of these positions. Someone like me would walk out, and the issue I see with that, I think, is that some of I mean, there's all kind therapists and social workers gonna come from all veins, all different backgrounds, different personalities, different ways of doing things, all of that.
Hmm.
But wouldn't you say that some of the very best therapists and social workers are those eccentric ones that are different, that just they do things their own way. They
Yeah.
have unique life experience and they do things. Well, that's me. And so I don't fit into that. And so essentially what social work has done has closed the profession in that regard,
Hmm.
like clinical work, off from people like me, because we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We have to have more freedom in the way that we go about things. And so essentially you ostracize somebody like me from doing that kind of work because I'm not going to do it. I literally can't. It's
Yeah.
not even I could seem like I'm exaggerating. I may be able to do it for an hour or a day or a week or a month or something like that. But it doesn't matter. I'm walking out of that door at some point, like
Yeah.
at most of the places that I hear this talked about. And I'm sorry, I know we have students in here, and I don't mean to be discouraging. I think it's more of I think we talked about this yesterday in our talking circle too, but
Hmm.
if there's going to be change, it has to be within, and if it's going to change, we've got to be willing to talk about it and address the hard issues,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I couldn't imagine you doing it. Like you said, we have different skill sets, and I am very much more if I have some sort of routine and I have my own kind of systems that work, I'm able to do these things, whereas yeah, you struggle with that a lot. Um and it wouldn't work to say, okay, at 1 p.m. Ace, you have 1 hour of admin time to get all your documentation done. I need it done in that hour. And then you're going to see 3 more clients and then you're going to go home.
Mm.
Like it wouldn't fit in your brain, right? But this is the problem that I find in social work. Why I was really excited to talk to Monica is because a lot of the reasons that we have to do things a certain way is because we're tied to insurance reimbursement, and especially Medicaid and the 1115 waiver in America. Now, this is different outside of America. But if we were operating more organizations from not necessarily private pay, maybe more grants, but less insurance reimbursement, you'd be able to do more of that stuff because you'd have more freedom. But then how do you offer it to the masses? How do you offer services to people that are not able to pay out of pocket?
That's the point. The system's rigged.
Yeah.
There's no way about it. There's no way out of it. I mean, it speaks perfectly to my story, I think, in that when I went to school for social work, it was because I'd come from a treatment facility, working
Mm,
at a treatment facility, supervising a treatment facility. And I thought to myself, I'm really good at this. I know other people that would be cool at it too. Why can't we create our own? And then I went and got my education and found that the system was rigged and I actually wouldn't be able to do something my way or a different
mhm.
way because the only way, not the only way, but mostly the only way to get paid is through systems that won't allow you to operate under those
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think did you wanna go to the chat?
Go ahead. I'm gonna check on these kids
Okay.
and then we'll check.
So I was just gonna say one thing that ever since I met Ace, he's wanted to open up a treatment center in his own way that would be very different from the ones that are currently running. Um, and this has been something on and off that we talk about, and we were recently talking about how it would still be great to be able to have some sort of center. I get really triggered in a way of the word treatment center or residential residential treatment center. It just the way that they're set up right now, I think does so much more damage than good. So I really don't like that word. And so whatever it would be, some sort of center, healing center, wellness retreat, whatever it would be. I don't know if it would work tied to insurance reimbursement, but then how do you offer these services to people that are not going to be able to pay thousands of dollars to go somewhere and find healing and health and wellness? And that's the thing that comes up over and over again is how do we provide these services and these dreams that we have and these visions and imaginations that we can see how things can be better? How do we do that within the system? Is it within the system? Do we need to do it outside of the system? All of these questions. And if Monica can't join us today, I hope we can in the future and ask her perspective on these sort of things of how can we still make a living because we need to while offering these services. I was just talking about the treatment centers and the ideas that we've had, but the questions that come up for us.
Yeah, well, I didn't catch it all, but it's funny, isn't it funny that the history of treatment centers in recent decades, all the shit that's come up, the whole Paris Hilton thing
Mm,
and all of the sexual abuse and things that's been happening in treatment centers, just like boarding schools. Anytime you take
yeah.
kids away and put them with strangers, I mean, there's lots of strangers that are there to do well, but there's always going to be stuff that comes up like that. But isn't it funny that you can have a system like that, treatment facilities, a network of them, often
Hmm.
owned by the same companies, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, that stuff like sexual abuse and other kinds of abuse can take place, but you're not allowed to try anything different. You know what I'm saying?
It's wild. It is so wild that it's also maddening how when we're talking in groups and meetings and we're trying to figure out what would help this person the most, especially kids, and then the only option seems to be these treatment centers that we know are harmful and that we're then still pushed to send people there. Like I can't. I cannot do it.
Well, let's get to these questions. But one
Sorry.
one more thought about that I think ties into what we were saying earlier is, like you said, taking these kids away and putting them in systems that we know don't work and
Hmm.
still continuously doing that. But circling all the way back to thinking about that MSW student or BSW student, and they get placed in protective services, family services, child protective services, whatever it's called, where
Hmm.
you're at. And I'm not here to diss those systems. I think that, well, maybe the system, but not the people within them.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to do really great work, but oftentimes those places, because of the high caseloads and all the stuff that goes on, get burnt out, just like we were saying, and they
Hmm.
leave. There's a high turnover rate. There's a lot of stuff going on. So then we place students in there because there's a high incentive. They offer positive incentives as far
Oh
as student
yeah.
loans, stipends, paying your tuition, things like that to get you to do your internship there. But oftentimes, Child Protective Services, Family Services is not operating on all cylinders because of those reasons that I mentioned,
Hmm.
because of the high turnover rate, the trauma, the vicarious trauma, things like that that comes through a transference, all of those things that come with that job. And so then a student gets put into that situation, or even as a, they need a job coming out straight out of school,
Mm-hmm.
and they get put in these negative environments, and those situations, those circumstances just continue to
Cycle.
yeah, to recycle itself over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to the chat.
Anyways, we got Tracy says, and I'm sorry you had trouble getting in. I think that was our fault this
Mm-hmm.
morning. And by the way, Monique is not going to join us. Maybe another time.
Okay.
Some technical difficulties. So Tracy says, I feel like the social work field requires a level of privilege, working school wise, but again, working in the nonprofit world with so much burnout, even prior to actually gaining an LCSW, licensed clinical social work degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Monica says, I felt this too. The systemic burnout from working within the government. I may have completed 6+ interviews a day, processing all different types of cases from someone applying for burial assistance, complicated Medicaid cases, young families seeking help with childcare, food, and rent needs, juggling several different programs, policies, and being under a time clock.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And Tracy says, to add to all of this, navigating the political tides, loss of systems, increase in need, we're going to see, in essence, more weight added.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing that comes up, especially around election season and then whatever happens after election season. There's inevitably s- there's groups of people that are stressed, unhappy. There's groups of people that are very happy and outwardly so, and they irritate the other people, and that happens everywhere, right? So that's happening to the people that are coming to see us as social workers. It's happening to the social workers themselves, and I don't think we also talk about that enough. Is how do we manage our own stress and anxiety around certain things that are happening while also keeping space and very unbiased space for people that come to see us as social workers and that we help, whether that be students or individuals seeking services. It's really hard. It's really, really quite hard. And I know a lot of clinicians who have struggled with that this time around with elections and with the outcome of elections, of whatever their own political beliefs and values are, um, whether they align with their clients or not, regardless, trying to hold space for somebody else in a professional and boundaried way can be very difficult. Very, very hard.
Yeah, well, I think one of the main things there is that obviously that people are politically charged up these
Hmm.
days. Information comes in different ways. Um, but the problem with that, especially in social work, is that when we think that we know that we're right
Mm,
and that the other person is wrong, and don't
yes.
get me wrong, there may be circumstances where someone's wrong and you're right. Um, but politically, in social work, obviously, social workers identify with Democrats and
Hmm.
what you might say left wing or liberal policies. And I don't like using all those terms because I don't think they really fit cleanly with each other.
No.
And it makes it not make sense.
I don't
Um,
even think you can say social workers either. Like the social work field in general.
I think the majority of you polled social workers, the
Mm,
majority of social workers are definitely Democrats.
mm,
Not saying that everyone or there's not enough of people that don't, whether it's people that just don't affiliate with a political party at all, or
mhm,
maybe you said Republicans. Um, Definitely, there's large groups of those others, but for the most part, social work as a profession, the organizations within
mhm.
social workers are going to identify with Democrats, and some of those reasons are obvious in the rhetoric that's being used and what aligns. But I think that where it gets into dangerous territory is when it's a this or that. It's a left versus right. It's a red
Mhm.
versus blue. It's this or that. And so if you're saying the Democrats over here and social workers are for Democrats and Republicans are over here and Republicans are bad, but the equation that doesn't make sense is just because this is bad doesn't make this good.
No.
And when we only focus on this being bad, we forget about our own side, our own, in a sense, if it was ourself that we're talking about, that self-reflection, taking care of ourselves
Yeah.
before we take care of other people. Or it could be, I always like to use the uh, make it biblical with Jesus. And you know, he said that you had to take the plank out of your own eye before you can remove the plank from your brother's eye. So a speck in your eye, sometimes it's called a speck.
Mm.
Um, but when we're constantly saying like, "Hey, look, you have a plank in your eye over there," sometimes what happens is we forget to look in the mirror that's right in front of us, meaning politically, and we don't notice that there's a giant plank or a giant speck blocking our
Mhm.
own vision. We're so focused and we're so transfixed on the other side that we don't recognize our own faults and things like that. Um, and when we do that, it allows us to say, over here is bad, but it helps me excuse my party's support for war, for example,
Mhm.
my party's complicity in the war, my party's complicity in the same systems that continuously are grinding us down year after year, cycle after cycle. Um, and then the worst part about it is what it leads to is the rise of over here, because eventually you become like inconsequential and kind of like clownish, if that makes sense to
Mhm.
certain entities.
Yeah.
And so any form of the truth, even if it's mostly bullshit over here,
Mhm.
any form of that like truth from the ground up, like you would hear Donald Trump say sometimes, just because he lies all the time or most of the time doesn't mean that he never says a nugget of truth.
Mhm.
And he does that especially during the election cycles and then doesn't follow up with them. But that leads to
Yeah.
the rise over here because they're saying over here, well, you won't even talk about it over here. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I do see more people now after this election round. I do see more people talking about this where they're not just saying one side versus the other. They're talking about the values and the topics that are wrong on both sides.
It's definitely changing. I
Yeah.
think all around there are more people, more people, I guess would be the best way to say it, more individuals out there
Mhm.
that are, looking at it from taking a step back and looking at it from a bigger picture. And I think even there were a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump that I've seen that are saying that they regret it because the things that they thought were, I don't know why they actually thought that they would happen, but
Mhm.
if they did think that those things were going to happen, that they're upset that that things haven't been happening the way that what they voted for essentially is what they said.
Yeah.
And I think you see that on, all around the spectrum as you see a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the establishment, whether that's the Democrats, the Republicans, whatever, are working harder than ever to drown out those voices. And they're much more aligned with each other than they are with the
Yeah.
alternative perspectives, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's very true. And I think this also comes down to just the push for like the tribalism and the division among like so many things. We talked about sports teams before in the podcast of how that division is created and pushed, and it happens in politics as well, where you have to be this tribe or this tribe, pick a side, otherwise you're an idiot. Um, and that just causes a lot of division and a lot of cognitive dissonance in that when we're told that we have to pick a side and people really feel like they need to, and once they do, some people just go all in and become blind to values that they actually have. Like if someone's really they do care about peace in the world and don't want the destruction that's happening everywhere through these wars, but then they become so blind because they've picked this one side, that they don't even fight for that anymore. That's the wildest thing that I've seen is with war.
Hmm.
It really is.
And I mean, to me, it's the biggest, I don't know, contradiction, the biggest thing that I'm unable to really understand. I was talking about this either last week or the week before in the podcast, but it's the biggest thing that I don't know what to do about when the whole war thing, um, because obviously Democrats and Republicans as a whole are both for supporting these wars. They haven't stopped. Um, we were Donald Trump says some terrible things right now about Palestine, and I'm like, what? That just astonish me sometimes. But what's even worse than that for me is that the whole time the Democrats were in office, all I did was hear them, propping up the war as well,
Mhm.
and almost unanimously voting, almost unanimously taking money from Israel, and
Mhm.
almost unanimously supporting, not 100%, but pretty damn close, and
Yeah.
definitely not enough resistance in the Democratic Party to swing it a different direction. And I think, a lot of the headline grabbing type of stuff and the provocative stuff that you'd see after the election was more along the lines of half the country's racist, because they didn't vote for Harris, they voted for Trump instead of Harris,
Mhm.
things like that. But we always like to bring up that most people actually didn't vote. The
Right.
majority of the winning ticket would have been the non-voters, I believe, or
Yeah.
pretty close to
Oh,
that.
close to.
So there's plenty of people that didn't vote that felt whatever disillusioned. They felt unincentivized, not disconnected from the system. Whatever. There's plenty of them. Um, and so to say something like that half the country is racist, which I think the whole country is racist. To be honest with
Mhm.
you, I think everybody has racist ideas and is racist to a degree. Um, but I think that if we can get away from those headlines, those posts, those memes, and whatnot on social media and within the news, we see um, something deeper, and that was that the majority of Democrats wanted an end to the war. They wanted a ceasefire. They
Mm.
wanted something different there, and the Biden administration absolutely refused to give it to them, and
Yeah.
Harris's campaign as well. Um, made sure the first thing that was always said was devotion to Israel.
Mhm.
Um, and so both sides supported the war. And when we get to this good versus bad thing, we fail to recognize that there's a whole lot of bad going all around. And when we're only focused on the other guy, the plank in someone else's eye, again, we're missing the plank in
In
our
our
own eye.
own.
And that's where social work is at. That's where social work is at today. We went to switch gears just a little bit, going to that NASW conference,
Mm.
the national conference. The positive sides of that were the connection. There was connection going on, the old school type of connection. People in
Mhm.
person, people seeing me talk, and then stopping me in the hallway and shaking my hand and passing off business cards, and just talking story about what's going on there in person.
Yeah.
On the other hand, and there's a lot of that. So I want to like lift up the NASW for putting stuff together like that. Local, there's local conferences
Yep.
usually in places every year or every other year. Alaska's is coming up. Lots of other ones going on. So and they actually have a lot of things going on online that make it so people can connect and things like that. But on the other hand, to me, the NASW and all social work institutions, or most social work institutions, are so in alignment with the Democratic Party
Mhm.
that it makes us as social workers somewhat complicit in what's going on. And I don't think that, for example, at the NASW, I don't think that they should be having politicians come um, to speak and things like that. I don't know. What do you think? Other people might think different. I mean, obviously, social work is political, but shouldn't it be more political on a personal level?
Well, this is why I've been wanting to read Tracy's comment, and I really love it. Firstly, I love the two wings, same bird, because I always use like the was it two sides of a coin, same coin. What's the
Two sides of the same coin.
two sides of the same coin? But I like that one, two wings, same bird. And then Tracy said, leaning away from the separation and more into the, and I quote, "I'm caring for people. How will this affect how the people are served?" And I think that's such a good question to not look at like, okay, the Democrats say this, the Republicans say this, but whatever anybody says, the people I'm caring for, how will this affect them, and us ourselves as well? How will it affect our communities and the people we're serving? I think that's a great way to look at it, because then we don't become so blind and just tribalistic about the thing that we're supporting. We remember, we go back to our values, and that's so much what revolutionary social work is about. It's value based, and so if you always go back to, okay, these are my values. Does this fit my values? Does this person, what they're saying, does it fit my values, regardless of what stamp that they have on themselves? Um, we got to do more of that, and so I appreciate that, Tracy.
Absolutely. I think Monica's comment fits well too. It's hard not to feel discouraged since that's the way the world works. People think what I do won't make a difference, but we need those people to step up. In my opinion, small contributions may make a difference in the long run. And I think that's exactly right. When I can't tell you how it will come about or whatever, but if there's any kind of revolution, whether that's at a specific university, in a country, in the whole country, it's going to be from the small contributions that I don't want to even call them small, but just the individual people that are able to awaken themselves and then collectively awaken.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that we don't realize what we've lost, talking about things that we've lost, is that we as a people, a country, I don't even know if this extends how far this extends outside the United States. We've been pacified. If you look at a lot of almost everyone that was involved in revolutionary movements back in the days, I mean, all the way, like even if you were considering George Washington, from George Washington to Fred Hampton, those are two people to put it weird in the same sentence, but
Yes.
from George Washington to Fred Hampton, those guys were in their 20s. Some of them early 20s. Fred Hampton was shot when he was 21.
Mm-hmm.
George Washington was president of the United States in his 20s, I'm pretty sure.
Was he in his 20s?
Pretty sure. But young.
Wow.
All these people were young. And so if you look at pictures of folks, even like 20, 30, 40 years ago, but especially if you go back even further, and you look at people that are in their 20s and you look at their faces, they look older.
Mm-hmm.
And the people today look younger. And I think it's because we've been pacified
Yeah.
in a number of ways. Our minds have been captivated.
Yeah.
And the 20, not saying no 20-year-olds, not saying that, but I mean, you don't see, like, even if you look at the presidents of the United States, George Washington versus Donald Trump or Joe Biden,
Mm-hmm.
talking about 80-year-olds that are damn near, on their deathbeds versus people that were, young, strong generals or revolutionaries in the streets.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that with Rev Love, if you remember.
And
And
hockey recently.
yeah, so we've been pacified in that regard. People don't think that they can do anything. Why would and I think most of us, it's probably changed along the way. But we look at when election season's around, right? It's the responsibility to vote, to go and make a difference, and this and that. And people are going to hate me for saying this again, but in most places, going to make a vote does not make a difference, especially for like the presidential election. I have never lived anywhere that my vote made a difference. The elections were already predetermined.
Mm.
In Utah, in Alaska, and Hawaii are the only places I've ever had the opportunity to vote. And in each one of those places, they're already politically charged up to where those, maybe in a primary or something, like when Bernie Sanders was running, a primary might make a little. I think Bernie did win the primary in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. But just pause that, because I think people would hate on what you're saying, because what if there was enough people that were thinking like you that then did vote and didn't just say, well, my vote doesn't count? Like,
sure, I think that's the shift that's got to be made. But I think what happens in recent cycles is people get charged up about something and then they go through, because participating in an election cycle, depending on the degree that you participate, but it's sort of an awakening in itself. Now, you may be completely hoodwinked and watch the same news channel and get the same, be in your echo chamber and whatever. But even then, it's going to open. You're going to be like, oh, I didn't know they were doing that. Oh, I didn't know. Even if it's just only about the other side, it's somewhat of an awakening, right? If you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And then you go through an election cycle, and I can only use, I guess a good example is just myself.
Mm-hmm.
I never was into politics. The first time I voted was actually as a member of the BSW program at UAF. I believe they took us to the
Oh, really?
to the polls. It was either in Rural Human Services or the BSW cohort, but one or the other, they took us over there to the polls, and I voted for Obama over Romney, and I felt very strongly about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think if I had to choose between the two, that's what I would choose. Actually, I don't think that I know that.
Yeah.
But there's no way that I would feel the same as strongly about it, and I think I would maybe even abstain from voting in that situation. But fast forward to the next election, which is when I met you,
Hmm.
when it was Trump running against. Eventually, it became Hillary.
It became Hillary.
But
Was
during the primaries, I was politically charged because I had gone through. I remember going through Sociology 101. Many of you, or the two of you that are in here with us, should have went through that class, and we learned about income inequality and the disparity of wealth and things like that. And I never knew. I never understood any of that. And I was like, "What the insert whatever curse word you want? What the hell?" It really bothered me. And then not too long after that, I'm watching TV and I see this old dude, Bernie Sanders. I never heard of him at the time. And he's talking about these things. And I never heard a politician talk about them. And I was like, hey, this guy is standing up for us.
hmm
You know, he's saying that this is bullshit and it is bullshit. And the other people won't even talk about it. And then there was a huge movement around it. And I've become somewhat disillusioned with Bernie Sanders as well since then.
yeah.
But not so much as I have with the Democratic Party because I mean, the only words that I can put into my mouth is I was disgusted to learn the process of the Democratic primary and how you go into it thinking that, hey, it's just a vote is a vote, right? And if we get enough of us, then we'll get him in there. But it doesn't work that way, and we don't have time to go through all of it here. But like between super delegates and all kinds of other things, there's systems in place that will prevent
hmm
something like that from happening. They will not let it happen.
Yeah. It's pre-decided, and we were so naive to that.
And so being disillusioned to that, and so I guess the overall theme of what I'm trying to say here is that oftentimes I think young folks, especially when they're first getting politically charged, they go into it and they have these ideas of what they've been told democracy is their whole life, what
Mm,
it's democracy is, and it's a Democratic Party. And then they go through it and maybe they lose the election, maybe they win it, whoever they're voting for, whatever. But somewhere along the line, they become awakened even further, and that is to the systems behind these elections and behind democracy. And I realized that it's not what I thought it was.
mhm.
And I've been being lied. I've been hoodwinked my entire life about what voting means or whatnot. And then I think the last thing I want to say on it is that, back to this idea of being pacified and not voting and things like that, is that in the public discourse as a professor, right? As somebody who's a teacher and influencer, all of these things, I'm not really allowed to say that you shouldn't vote or that you or this or that. It's against the mores of society, of our society, it's against the rules.
Yeah.
You have to vote. You're not allowed to say anything else. Um, and so we reinforce that amongst ourselves. And I took a lot of heat by saying some of the things that I did, and I think I would say things a little bit differently today than I did then. Uh, and that's the whole point, right? Of is evolving
Mhm.
and whatever.
What you should be doing.
But what I mean, if 40% of the nation isn't voting or whatever, if it's that high, if it's above 5%, if voting is that important,
Mhm.
if it really is that important for change and whatnot, then we should require 90% of the nation to vote, or we should require everyone to vote. Or you can't have to me, you can't vote in someone like Donald Trump and have 40% of people that didn't vote.
Yeah. But how do you so if you're saying if you're forcing people to vote,
I
but you're
think
only giving them 2 options?
that's probably not the way to go, is forcing it either. But
Mhm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is if voting were really that meaningful and it were really that impactful and you had that much of an opportunity to make a difference,
Mhm.
then there would no way in hell be 40% of people
Yeah.
that didn't go vote. So those 40% must either not give a shit at all, maybe even be completely oblivious, which certainly there are people there. I was
Mhm.
one in my early 20s. There are people maybe like me who says like, look, I'm not both of these candidates are supporting a war that I can't be a part of. I just can't vote amongst other things.
Yeah.
Um, and there's going to be a lot of people that just say like, I'm not voting for either of these old 80-year-old guys that don't align with anything that I stand for, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so I'm not voting for anyone. But if you have 40% of the nation that thinks that it's not important enough, or it's more important for them not to vote, then the election shouldn't even count in my opinion. If again, if they were as important and they were as meaningful and could make a difference as they say that it can, then the people would know that and they would
Mhm.
go vote. But the people themselves, ourselves, don't truly believe that, or it would be much more of a prerogative. It would be much more
Yeah.
of an
Urgent.
incentive, an urgency to go and do it.
Yeah.
And even after the first Trump presidency, as bad as it was and as a shit show as it was in so many ways, there were less people that went out to vote against him the next time.
Mm. That's true.
I guess when he at the end of his, there was a lot of people that came out against him, but it went down. So that shows you that the person that was elected into office, Joe Biden, didn't inspire people on any kind of higher level. It actually diminished significantly.
Yeah. It did. And so cuz I always want to move the conversation into then what can we do about it? Like how can we become less pacified and captivated, and how can things change? Obviously, we don't have this full power to just shift the system and in the way that democracy is in America. But what can we do? And I think there's a lot that we can do to be less pacified. When we talk about connection, that's important. But also when we talk about social media, and I think that is had a huge impact, especially on the youth pacification, because everyone has their AirPods in and is staring at their phone. And yes, there's like political commentary in social media and all of that, but it also can become an echo chamber. And there's also a whole lot of other stuff that psychologically has been made to just keep us captivated and not care about the stuff that actually matters. Um, and so we can control our social media use in that way. Like, what else can we do?
It's a good question. I don't think there's any easy answer. But before I answered, I just wanted to
Mhm.
laugh at Monica who talked about the wigs they used to wear. I think you're talking about the George Washington era.
Oh,
But that proves the point even further. Back in George Washington's era, they was trying to look older. And now they're spray painting their
yeah.
faces and having, doing their
Surgery.
hair in certain ways to look younger. But as
Mhm.
far as changing things, I think that there's no simple one thing. And I think a true revolution, like a large scale revolution, comes about unexpectedly in certain ways. There may be people doing things, and there may be things that are happening, but
Mm,
it comes about of itself. But what I would say that could get us there would be to stop relying on the systems and think that there's going to be some kind of savior. Even when we looked at Obama and things like that, people talked about him like he was the one that was going to change everything and do all that. But the reality is, there's no one individual, no president, nobody, no billionaire, nobody that is going to do that for the people. And as who knows what kind of heart somebody like Obama had going into
mm.
office. Um, but we do know, there's the saying that you are who you hang out with. And so if you go into politics, especially somebody as the president, you're only going to be surrounded by who? You're not surrounded by everyday people around. I mean, and the country's huge. We have what,
Yeah.
400 million people or something. Um, you're surrounded by other politicians and by lobbyists and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you become that, even if you weren't that. And again, I don't know where he was at and what his heart was when he went into it, but he didn't come out with the heart that we needed, if that makes sense.
Mhm. No.
And so we could stop waiting on those things, those systems that have never shown up consistently for us, and we can start having these discussions, these dialogues. We can stop blaming each other. We can stop with the division and the labeling, and we can see each other as family, as kin, as brothers, sisters, as family, and we can see each other. Like, I don't think in the world we see each other right now. When we're looking at each
Yeah.
other, we don't even see each other right now. We see the labels. Even when we talk about race,
Mhm.
we try to get away from. Alicia and I have tried to get away from labeling somebody by their perceived race.
Mhm.
The As the first way to describe someone, and it's so hard. We've been conditioned so much not to be able to do it in another way. Um,
It's a tool for division.
but yeah, we've got to get though, we've I'm sure there's plenty of seeds that have, been planted and are being sowed around the world and
Mhm.
wherever we're at. Um, but it's going to take us, we're too comfortable. It's going to take us like digging the things up and, unsettling the soil and, creating a rabble somehow.
You know what's crazy though about when you say we're too comfortable is we are too comfortable, but isn't that interesting to say that in how the world currently is? Like the world is very uncomfortable in ways that there's still so much war and destruction and poverty and stress and burnout and all of this. But we are still also, as a population, too comfortable. I just think that's a very interesting contrast.
Say that again.
So I think you're correct in that as a population, we are too comfortable. But the world itself is very uncomfortable. We have so many natural disasters happening with climate changing, and we have so much war and destruction happening, poverty everywhere, homelessness, burnout. All of this stuff is very uncomfortable. And yet we are still so comfortable. I just think it's such an interesting contrast to have.
Well, I think, well, all of those things are going on, and it's hard to put it on a global perspective because things can vary so much from place to place. But if you just took at the United States,
Mhm.
is we have more resources available than ever. I mean, I think especially if you're comparing it to how people lived, say, just even like 200 years ago or something like that,
Mhm.
even 100 years ago, a little bit over 100 years ago, that they say we live like kings. I mean, you have the iPhone with everything in the world pretty much on it, or a smartphone right at your disposal. Most places are connected to the internet. People have these
Mhm.
giant TVs that are not that expensive anymore in their homes. They're just an all around. We live lives of luxury in that regard. Air conditioning. I mean, I'm not saying everybody has it, but
Mhm.
we ultimately live lives of luxury compared to the past. But not only that, when I talk about comfort, I mean like comfort in the way that we go about our lives and the things that we consume. Um,
Mm.
when for example, we're comfortable going in and shopping at the grocery store, but most of the grocery stores are set up the same way with the same stuff in them. Most of us are comfortable listening to the radio station or to the music that we listen to, not being aware of what it is that we're consuming through that. Most of us are comfortable with the media that we're consuming
Mhm.
in the TV and the news and movies, but unaware of what those things are actually saying to us,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And so we're comfortable in these lifestyles and the things that we're consuming. And it makes it so that, that again, that we're pacified. Recognize the, we're not able to recognize. So if you say you were talking about the temperature rising or climate change or natural disasters,
Mhm.
most of us are not really able to look at that honestly because we're too comfortable. We're watching it from our big screen TV in our air conditioned house,
Yeah.
doing what we do, consuming what we consume. And I think it goes back. We're reading in our book, in our substance abuse class, we're reading The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. And it's that myth of normal. Like we think all these things are normal, but they're more
Yeah.
out of whack than they've ever been. And if you've read that book, the Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate and Daniel Mate, it's like reading through it for me. I'm not saying I agree with everything that's in there, but reading through it is like, yeah, I thought about this before. That is, you know, messed up, and do it again and again and again and again
Mhm.
and again. And you see how twisted up our society is and the way that we do things. And it's just crazy. So how can we ever make a real change if we're so comfortable and we're still counting on being comfortable
Mm.
in such a way, right? Football season's coming up, right? I gotta, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just the idea of comfort and discomfort is important to talk about. And I think we talked about this. Yeah. Comfortable and complacency. Exactly, Tracy. And we talked about this even in terms of growth, like personal growth, when you get so comfortable somewhere, um, you become complacent, and then it really hinders your growth and your evolution in ways. And we can talk about it how we're talking about it now, um, politically with the world and all of that, but also just within ourselves and in our careers as well. I think it's really important to look at, are we too comfortable? Are we complacent? Where can we get a little bit more uncomfortable? I think for me personally, even starting this podcast was very uncomfortable. I'm not somebody that just likes to speak in public. I'm very much more a behind the scenes person, and this was stepping outside of my comfort zone 100%. And going to any kind of conferences and speaking, all of those things are not natural for me, but I love now to step outside of my comfort zone because I know there's so much growth and evolution that comes out on the other side, and I have to do that every day.
Yeah, and I mean, on a smaller level, like you said, on a personal level, that's what stifles growth as well, as being comfortable. In
Yeah.
order to grow, to truly grow, you have to become uncomfortable. And talk about to that thing about holding it on so tight and not
Mm,
being willing to let it go. Most of the things that ail us as people, as a country, or whatever, is stuff that we're just holding on to so tight that doesn't make sense for us. And if we just let it go and sow that discomfort, and that's what I think I was trying to say earlier with sowing, with rabble rousing, is
oh
sowing
yeah.
that discomfort in people.
Yeah. 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 These important. I like these conversations coming up in my day to day life too, because I think all of us here, there's four of us here talking. If we can just think about ways this week to just be a little bit more uncomfortable in ways that do help us grow and evolve, and that might be just noticing things, habits that we've got into that are we've been complacent with and are not helping us grow and are not benefiting our wellness or the people around us. Or if it's stepping into something that we've really wanted to do and become uncomfortable and take that step, or if it's like reflecting on what are we also contributing to certain harmful things within the world, narratives, or is there something else that we could do differently? That going back to what Tracy or Monica said about, is what we're doing serving the people that we serve? Is that fitting our values? Is it fitting what we want to give off to our communities and to ourselves? So that is what I'm taking.
Mhm. And I think also it's interesting now because time flies so quickly when you're a parent and when you're out
Mhm.
there, and I'm, as being a professor, it's really unfathomable almost to me that some of the students that come in now are students that were in high school during the pandemic, and things like that. It seems really, really weird to me. So you have to understand
Yeah.
the the historicalness of it all, and how some younger folks are not going to understand or empathize with the past because they weren't around, and the world is completely
Yeah.
different now. And I think about this in Alaska. There are certain native villages, Alaska native villages, that are not allowed to fish for salmon, that have been doing it since before time immemorial.
Yeah.
So if you were to go back in the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and you were to say to Alaska as a whole, because I think Alaska would be very empathetic in this regard,
Mhm.
or especially to that particular village, and you said, hey, the way things are going, there'll be no fish left in 40 years and you won't be able to fish anymore. So unless we do something about it, then they'll be gone and you won't be able to fish.
Mhm.
I would imagine that most people in Alaska would have upturned everything. And I'm sure there were conversations about it going, but they're probably not quite as definitive as knowing just how bad it would be.
Mhm.
And then here we are in 2025, and there are places like that where, again, the indigenous, the native folks that have, been there for longer than we can remember, and have been harvesting salmon as a way of life, culture, as a way of life, sustenance for time immemorial. Why aren't the streets just upturned? And
Yeah.
why should there be any commercial fishing if the native people of an area, why should there be any tourism or anything in that regard at all if the very heart of the matter has been corrupted, and you know that line has been broken off? when is enough enough?
We just
Um,
accept it.
and to me, Alaska, just like everywhere else, is pacified. Alaska's become pacified.
Yeah.
To me, that should be 110% unacceptable. Why should the politicians be talking about anything else? We've had politicians that have been in office for a long time now as well. Why? I mean, it should be so outrageous that we're not doing anything else until we can figure it out. You go to Utah, where I'm from, and it's Salt Lake City, named after the Great Salt Lake. Um, just in my lifetime, it's shrunk significant, like more than I could ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that it's because originally what makes the Great Salt Lake, right, is the Great Salt Lake is that unlike other lakes, it doesn't have an outlet. It's like stuff only
Oh.
comes into it,
Oh.
if that makes sense. So it builds up salt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, so back in the day in Utah, they had all these big rivers everywhere, and over the years, they dammed them up and they blocked them up, and people used them for irrigation and for watering and things like that. Well, the population in Utah has went through the roof, especially post-pandemic. People from California and whatnot moving, trying to find greener pastures in Utah. Well, the Great Salt Lake's drying up. It's releasing toxins into the air. All the birds
God.
and wildlife that have went there since, again, time immemorial, are unable to go there. But more and more people. I was just in Utah, and it's crazy how many apartment buildings there are, how many more people live there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, at what point would you say, well, what we're going to be fucked if the lake dries up? It's going to, I mean, the air is going to be unbreathable, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when will they say enough is enough?
Do you hear people talking about it when you're in Utah?
Very little.
Really?
Most of the people that I talk to just minimize it. And so, well, if it's the Great Salt Lake, named out the big thing in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it doesn't exist anymore, well, what is that place anymore? I mean, and for one, like I said, the air is going to be toxic. All those animals are going to
That's
die.
wild.
It's going to dry up. Well, when would you say enough is enough, and that, hey, watering the lawns is not as important as making sure that the Great Salt Lake still exists?
Mm-hmm. But we think very individualistically as a larger population. And I think that's the biggest problem. Like when especially within when native communities, when they talk about 7 generations and looking ahead and doing things now that are going to support 7 generations in the future, we don't do that at all. Like the politicians that are making decisions for right now, what is going to financially improve themselves in the top 1% and maybe somewhat the country, but right now, rather than 7 generations ahead. And
Doesn't that also speak to why we should have younger politicians, in the sense that they're going to
exactly.
be alive for a long time?
Exactly. I was talking to someone this past week, and she was saying how it's just so embedded in her being. She's Alaska Native to think about how her actions and her behaviors and her thoughts will impact future generations. And she doesn't necessarily think about it in 7 generations, but it's so embedded in how she was raised that it is weird to her to see anybody not think like that and to think that somebody would have to force themselves to think about the future. And that's what we have lost within Indigenous communities. That is so highly important. And we've just come in, and I say we in a very general sense, but and have just become very individualistic and worry about us right now, not even not even our grandkids. People aren't even thinking about that.
Disconnected. Going back to
Hmm.
the word, disconnected from it all.
Yeah. Connection. Yeah. Connection and discomfort and getting away from that, being pacified. What have we got in the chat?
You can cover it. I'm having trouble seeing that part.
I know. Yeah, when we're looking, we look really old because we're like squinting our eyes, but the computer's coming far ahead. Um, Tracy was saying it courage to have these hard conversations. And it does take courage because I think a lot of people get shut down and if you want to use the word cancelled for having hard conversations that go against the status quo. So it's hard to have it. And elder really can't see it.
Integration.
Oh, elder integration. Yes, so important. I've been visiting with my great uncle who's 88, amazing. The amount of history and knowledge learned in that lifetime can help guide us so much if we're receptive. Yeah. And oftentimes, than most, that knowledge is lost with them. How can we use our lived experience collectively? Yeah. And bringing that's become more important um, within your circles and classes, right? Is thinking how can we bring elders in to share their lived experience? And we need to have that more on the podcast, I think, as well. So we don't lose that because a lot of times it is an oral history. And so we need to capture that with technology we have.
And positive news on that is I was awarded $5,000 to bring elders in to the work that I'm
Yes.
doing. So
Yes.
I will be paying some elders some
Mhm.
some reciprocity there to come and join us.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. In Yakutat, we did a 100-year strategic plan. Wow. Where the whole community was
Invited.
blind today, invited to collectively have such an important conversation. How powerful could that be on a larger scale? Yes.
Mhm.
That's amazing. 100-year strategic plan. Because often you hear that like 5-year strategic plan. That is still such a short time frame. 100 years, it's thinking selflessly about what is going to happen when you are not on the planet. And I think a lot of people can't do that. They really can't do that.
Mhm.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Thank you so much, Monica and Tracy, for contributing to this conversation.
And this is another thing that brings to mind talking about the NASW conference. There's a lot of diversity, especially like, among Black and Latino and white people. There's a lot of diversity there.
Mm.
It's interesting that there, again, I don't want to say there was none because I was really busy, so I didn't see everything there. But from what I saw, I didn't see any presence of indigenous elders. And why is
No.
that? Why is that? If you think about it, I mean, we have to answer the question. Why is that? Why, even in somewhere like social work, we don't really value that? I'm not saying us as individuals,
Right.
but as social work as a whole, we don't value that. Why is that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would to take what Tracy was saying even further, what would it look like if, um, an NASW conference was guided by elders
Mm.
in such a way? And I know back in the days when we had, I think it was either the NASW conference or it was for I can't remember, it was for the behavioral health aid program. We had uh, a convening a conference or something, and grandmother Rita Blumenstein facilitated a talking circle with the whole thing, and it lasted forever. But I mean, you could imagine how powerful that is. But what if the ways that we operated were less formal meetings and more talking circles with elders and with shared lived experience and things like that? How would that look different? Even when we talk about politics, what if instead of two sides of the aisle, it was a circle?
Mm. Yes. Imagine that visual.
What if it
Like
was a
it's
circle and the
just.
politicians had to reflect and they were public so people could see how they were reflecting instead of making points and debates and arguments all
Mhm.
the time? What if it was something more like that? What would it look like? And this is where I think, Angela Davis always says that you have to use your imagination before it can never come true. If you can't imagine it being such a way,
Yeah.
if you can't imagine it being any different, then it can never come to be. And I think that goes with something like, say, these forever wars or mass incarceration. For most people in the world today, especially younger folks in school and stuff, they don't know any other way because it's always been mass incarceration. There is
Mhm.
no other. They think that that's normal, that that's the way that it is. Or since we're always in wars and it's always perpetually going on, they think that that's just the way that the world is, but that's not necessarily true.
Mm.
Things have been different before, and most of human history, we didn't have mass incarceration
No.
and things like that. Even in the United States, most of American history, we didn't have, as shitty as certain things were, there wasn't mass incarceration on that level.
Yeah. You know what? Being in the social work field and working with amazing individuals this week also had me reflecting on just there's so many amazing humans in the world. And I think the majority of people are just so incredible. And like the things people go through and then the resilience they have and the ways that communities come together and connect. And I think it's amazing. It like blows my mind how incredible humans are. Um, But then there are groups of people that push us away from that, I think, innate human nature to connect and to do wonderful things and to be there for each other. Um, yeah, and push towards these other systems that harm the majorities. And I don't know what my point is with that. I reflect a lot on how amazing humans are and what we could do if we imagine and push forward with these ideas we have. We have so many ideas of ways that we can build connection and kind of event things that we could put on that would really encapsulate all of these values. And we've just got to do it. We've got to do these things.
Yeah, well, one of the cool ideas is that working with my substance abuse students
Mm,
is doing a group project and convening at the NASW conference in Alaska
hmm
this September, which you might go to. So that would mean you would meet both Tracy and Monica, who are here in the chat. And I think
Yeah.
that opportunities like that, it's like making the road by walking it, and other people will see what we're doing. And we've talked about, as well as especially now that I got that money, potentially having an elder come and facilitating that big circle,
Yep.
like we were talking about.
Yep.
Um,
Making it happen.
but I was wondering, Monica or Tracy, what do you have any questions for us, like outside of what we're talking about? Is there anything you would want to know our thoughts or opinions are, uh, especially as they might be related to social work? Just want to throw that out there, and we'll wrap it up soon. Has anything else been on your mind?
One thing, kind of what we've been talking about today, our youngest, Aaliyah, she's 5. She said to me yesterday, because every morning she asks, like, is it a work day? And then she's so sad when it is a work day. And she said, it's just always screens, screens, screens. You always have to be on a screen because my whole job right now is all my meetings, all my clients, everything is on the computer. And I've got to listen to that. We can't dismiss those things that our kids see and they see as a problem. And that's just been on my mind a lot lately of how I can shift that. She's seeing I'm on the screen way too much. And I try so hard to, like, at the end of the day, not be on a phone or a computer.
How are you going to get those shorts done if you don't get on the computer?
But then I have to get the shorts done. And yeah, it's like this has just been on my mind a lot, that my 5-year-old is telling me I got to connect more physically in person. I don't even think she's saying with her. I think she's saying with other people, you know? It's just something that's been on my mind.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you could take that a step further with screens and stuff, and I think that we've done a really good job at parenting in contrast to what I see from some of the other parenting situations out there. And not to criticize anybody,
Mm.
because I know everybody's in their own
It is
thing, and so
hard.
I'm not criticizing anyone, but I would like to give ourselves a little pat on the back,
Mm.
because our kids don't need the iPads and the phones waiting in line at the restaurant and things like that. Whatever, they
Yeah.
don't. They're able to self-regulate and self-maintain, and so I think that's a very positive thing. I don't think that we were ever meant to need to be captivated and distracted for every little moment. And once
No.
in a while, it's okay, and it's good to look around you and just see what's around you and hear the noises, and you know, you know,
Yeah.
back to what you were saying about all the young people with
The
AirPods and going on
AirPods.
a hike, and I could see that there could be some reasons for having them in, but so many people, when I've been on a hike, I just see them totally oblivious to everything. They don't say hello. They don't. And for me, I can only speak for myself. A big reason to go out into nature on a hike is for the sounds and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
it reminds me, when I first met Alicia, she took me on a friends with her hike, and they had a big old boom box playing rap music in Hawaii, hiking up the mountain. It's pretty funny to think back on that now.
Yeah. I know you were like, what? Why are we
You
doing
know, I was
this?
more in alignment with that stuff back then.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's funny.
says, are you still planning on having the podcast sharing your story with overcoming addiction?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about that. I think it's a very important one, and we just gotta. Maybe we would have did it today if we'd have known how it
If
was going
we
to go
yeah.
down.
We could maybe do that next week.
Yeah, I'll get it in before the class is over for sure. Make
Mm-hmm.
sure everybody has the opportunity to ask me questions as well.
Yeah, and Aaliyah is a very smart little human. Monica, she really is.
Yeah. Well, Tracy says, I've really valued the conversation. Personally, I've been navigating negotiating a social work job offer. Any advice on how to
Mhm.
actively advocate for yourself as we're talking about pay and flexibility and what we need in this field? Damn, where's
Mm.
Manika when we need her?
I know, like these questions come up all the time. And I remember going into the position I'm in now, and I was talking to my therapist about how do I make sure that I advocate for myself and get a good salary without saying something that may be outrageous to somebody else. And she actually she was pushing me to advocate for like, an incredibly high salary. And I just didn't feel comfortable with it because I thought they would just say, "Well, never mind. You don't we'll find someone else that will take the other salary." And so I kind of found a place in the middle. But I think the best thing that you can do is really do your own research and look around at what other companies are paying, what other people are getting. And we have to have a little bit more transparency with that, where we can just comfortably talk about it, you know. Um, and so yeah, do your own research. Not Don't diminish your own worth as well. I think we sometimes have that, like whether it's imposter syndrome or we just think we're going to be ridiculed if we ask for a higher salary. And I think also sometimes the worst thing they'll say is, "No, but we could offer you this," you know? And so if you lowball yourself, you're going to get lowballed. And if you give a higher offer than you think that you should get or would get, maybe would get, you may actually just get a little underneath that, and that might fit really well. It's not. I don't like being in that space either.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I wish I had better advice. We've already talked about it a little bit, Tracy, and I'm sure we'll talk about it this coming week a little bit more. But I think just being knowledgeable and confident, manifest it yourself. Obviously, you're not going to be manifest, $1 million an hour from them. But
Mhm.
think about what you want, what you need, how that compares to the way that things are, um, and be bold and stand up for yourself, and
Yeah.
just do it in a kind way. And like I was saying before, the worst case scenario from my perspective is that they say no.
Yeah.
But more likely, I would say, is that they meet you somewhere in the middle, like Alicia said.
That's actually
The
what happened with this position. I said a little higher, and then they went like a couple of dollars underneath. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
Mhm.
sure. Anything else in here? I think that's it. Feel free to pop in any more questions if you have any. Um,
Can I ask you a question?
you just did.
He does that to us all the time. I'll ask you another question. What is just something going into this weekend, next week? Is there anything that you really want to focus on? Anything that's been on your mind that's important to you going into this next week?
Just in general.
Hmm. For your
Um,
own evolution, growth. When we're talking about connection and not being pacified and
yeah, I think honestly, is the best thing for me is to work on the projects that I've got going
mm,
on, like the revolutionary social work meditation series, the class part. The
yeah.
meditation is one thing, but the class part of it, the first, well, it's this number two, but the first value that I want to go more in depth on is kinship. And I think that it's those kind of things that I produce that sometimes make the biggest difference because it's out there. And like I was saying, when I was looking at the YouTube statistics,
Mhm.
those videos that I had done before were like watched for the not the most amount of times, but they were like the percentage of the video that was viewed by people was over 100%.
They
Like
were
so people were
rewatching.
rewatching them.
Yeah.
And it's also seemed when I put that first one out, and then the shorts with the individual values, it seemed to spark a lot of interest in other people reaching out to me.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that, even thinking about connection, I think that even though I do that by myself per se,
Mhm.
that me putting it out there, it creates connection all over the place because somebody sees it and they say, "Oh, I've been thinking about that. Oh, why?" And
Yeah.
then so they reach out to me and we connect. And I think also just continuing the current trend of connection with other social workers, other people that are out there thinking differently, like we've been doing recently. I feel very strongly about it, and so I think being able to be productive in that regard. And it's
Mhm.
hard because I have so many things that I've got to worry about. I'm still teaching and making sure that I'm up to date on the project we're working on together, the module, making sure the modules are up and relevant and current, and all that, grading and all that kind of stuff, taking care of the family. There's so many things. I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Um, but when I'm able to get into those productive modes and get those things out there, and we also have like 10 podcasts sitting, not to mention this one, just sitting there.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what I want to focus on is, as I'm wrapping up this last month of summertime, at least as far as the academic year goes, is that I'm getting some of those things done and pushing these ideas forward and letting them evolve
Yeah.
and making those connections. That's what I'm about, I think.
Awesome.
What about you?
Me, well, on top of what I was saying before about, what Leah put in my mind, I have one more article in my Circle of Self series that I want to finish up. It's nearly ready. And that in itself is really helping me write my book, the Circle of Self book. So I think just pushing that forward. Because again, I think it's another way to connect with people and share what I think is key for our health and our healing and our happiness. So definitely pushing that forward.
Yeah, well, Tracy said she's going to focus on leaning into being more uncomfortable,
Mm,
and that's what's up. That's what it's all about.
yeah.
Let us know how that goes. What about you, Monica? You focusing on anything this coming week? Um, but I think something that also comes with all the stuff we've been doing is like a sense of responsibility, right? Somebody sends you a
Yeah.
long email talking about what you talked about or asking for something or just connecting, and it can be that takes a lot of energy as well and commitment to be able to respond to those. And so,
It does.
but I think leaning into that responsibility and saying,
Mhm.
hey, it also makes me a better person by doing that. Creating this connection is positive,
Yeah.
and it's hard because I have, like at this point, people all the time are reaching out. Hey, can you meet with us and talk? Can you meet with me? Can you meet with us and talk about this? Can you? Not to mention doing podcasts and keeping up on everything else we were talking about. It's challenging, but you have to almost just lean into it and
Mhm.
get up a little bit earlier. And it's funny because this most of the stuff you would read says when you wake up, don't go to your phone or don't go to the computer. And I agree with that for the most part. But you know what? Some days I wake up and I'm charged and I have things on my mind and I'm able to go straight to the computer and just like hammer out tons of emails or grading paper, grading stuff or whatever, producing something. And so sometimes I just got to take what the universe is inviting me to do at that point in time.
That's why we're different. I can't do that.
Got to do what I got to do.
I need my slow entry into it. Monica says being a bit more kind to myself. Yes, working on that all the time. That's a
Mhm,
great one to keep working on.
mhm,
Compassion to ourselves. And that's actually my last article that I'm writing is about love, and it's the love element in the Circle of Self is very much focused on how we are compassionate and loving ourselves so that we can give love and compassion outward. So I should send that to you, Monica, when it's done.
mhm. And the myth of normal talks about that too. If you all remember a couple modules ago or a couple sections ago, where he talks about it from a few different perspectives. But there's often people in social work and in like nursing fields and other things like that, the helping professions,
Hmm.
that they're always doing all these things for everybody else, and they look at it as virtuous. Well, it is virtuous, to help other people. I'm not saying it's not, but then they don't take care of themselves, and they're they have these chronic problems physically and mentally and emotionally, and they're just following this virtue of being selfless. But sometimes we need to, not sometimes, all the time, we need to take care of ourselves and be more
Hmm.
kind to ourselves.
Yep.
I think that's one thing that could create a revolution in the world. I think as
I believe it.
as nasty as we can be and divisive we can be to each other, I think the main culprit oftentimes is ourselves, and that's why we treat and why we act that way towards other people, because we feel those own our own insecurities and negative things, and that reinforces itself, and so on and so on. So some of the one of the best things that we can do is to take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves, especially. And I think Monica might resonate with this a little bit, but um, for people like me, is the way that we talk to ourselves and about ourselves that internal dialogue. How are you describing yourself in your own mind? That's important
Mhm.
to use positive language, to be kind in
Yeah.
that regard, even when you're talking to somebody else about yourself, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank
Being
you again.
being sorry for being sick or being sorry for something
Oh, you
not
hate
working out
those
right,
emails.
you know what I'm saying? But I mean, even to ourselves, saying it to ourselves though,
Mm.
you know, feeling such a way that you have to be sorry for not being quote unquote perfect. You know what I mean?
I'm terrible at that.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'll advise my students not to do it and then do it myself.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. That's all the time we got for you for now. Sorry it didn't work out as initially intended, but we'll try to get Monique on at another time and talk about how to level up as social workers. Thanks, Tracy and Monica, for your contributions. And for anybody that's tuning in after the fact, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate whenever we have people in the audience contributing, it really adds something. So thank you all. Peace, love,
All
gratitude.
right. Peace.